I'm John Coe. Over the course of my 46-year career in Washington's commercial real estate community, I've had the opportunity to work alongside and learn from many of the individuals who have helped shape this region. In recent years, through the Icons of DC Area Real Estate podcast, I began sitting down with these leaders to capture their stories, not just what they built, but how they thought, how they made decisions, and how they navigated change over time. What emerged from those conversations was something worth preserving. This film brings together reflections from 15 of those leaders, offering a perspective on people, relationships, and judgment that have quietly guided the evolution of this industry. Several of the individuals featured here continue to shape the profession today, and their willingness to share their experiences made this documentary possible. I'm also grateful to the sponsors and partners who have supported this work, and to the broader community that formed through the iconic journey in CRE, which now continues through Coe Enterprises with a focus on mentorship, storytelling, and professional development, and to Station DC for providing a platform for the next chapter of this community. This film is simply an invitation to pause, reflect, and appreciate the people behind the work. The Washington, D.C. skyline tells a story of evolution, not just in steel and glass, but in the visionaries who shaped it across the generations. This evolution is also marked by periods of profound change, from the economic booms that fueled rapid development to the crushing blows of financial crises like the S&L collapse and the Great Recession. It reflects social strife too, as neighborhoods transformed, sometimes displacing communities, and as the city grappled with the issues of disinvestment and recovery. Through it all, the skyline stands as a testament to the resilience, adaptation, and the enduring drive to build and rebuild.
DC was a small town, and it was growing so fast that it needed sophistication of a banker to understand the impact of the metropolitan area. So as the Beltway was being built and Metro was being built, you needed to integrate the area and have much more thought of how it can come together, and I think they did a good job of that.
The economic boom of the 1980s empowered a generation of developers who would fundamentally reshape the capital region. 3 podcast guests shared their perspectives on the 1980s boom. Ray Ritchie highlighted market opportunities, Bob Cohen emphasized relationship building, and Tom Bizzuto discussed calculated risk-taking.
We put together the U.S. News and World Report deal in the West End, which is now all the red brick buildings you see in the West End on 24th Street.
That was pretty much a build-a-suit for them, wasn't it?
It was a build-a-suit for them. We did the Park Hyatt Hotel. We did 2 residential buildings, all of 24th on the east side, and all of N Street on the south side from 23rd to 25th.
Your friends at CB help you with that?
I was helpful with CB, although the people who were most helpful was Steve Goldstein, and who represented U.S. News and World Report. And after we put the deal together, the magazine decided to sell itself, and Mort came in and bought the magazine because he was the only one who understood both the publishing business and our real estate deal. So he then became owner of U.S. News and World Report, technically our partner because we had a 50-50 joint venture with U.S. News. So Boston Properties owned half the project, and Mort owned the other half personally.
Bill Morris said to me one day, he said, Bob, if you're going to go visit John and ask him about selling his real estate, you better know more about his real estate than he does. Because otherwise, why would he hire you?
Exactly.
What could you offer him?
Right.
So every time I got involved with something, I took the time to learn it. And then I worked closely with a young guy at the time, Chip Ackridge.
Oh, sure.
And I probably did the first 10 or 12 deals that he did as a broker, and wound up investing with him in those
when he
deals.
first started.
Yeah, and so I actually learned the land business through the acquisitions that he made. And I expanded, and I worked with Oliver Carr, and I worked with Ben Jacobs, and I worked with Mel Lincoln, and once in a while with Nick Antonelli. So the mafia.
That's quite a group.
So that was the first negotiation. They was negotiating with them, and what we negotiated was ultimately a company that was owned by the four of us. I was the majority, and still am the majority stockholder, but we put together that corporation. Then, and in fact, the thing I had done the very next day after talking to Oxford and getting their agreement that they were going to sell me the operation was go up to Boston and sit down with the Copley people and get them to agree that we would have an exclusive relationship and they would fund our equity on our apartment deals in this greater Washington area.
Did you bring Rick and John with you?
No, I didn't.
You did not?
No, at that point I knew Rick was going to join me. I had no idea the others were. So I had that relationship. And then, of course, we had very little equity to put into the company. We had some, but as I said, a lot of our net worth was in unpaid bonuses from a company that was going underwater. So Rick managed to get a bank then called a Maryland National Bank to give us a $2 million letter of credit, a $2 million line of credit, rather, secured only by our personal guarantees. I got to paint that picture a little deeper for you. Here we were, I was 40, John was 45, Bernie was 60, Rick was 35, approximately. We all had kids. All had kids. We were getting ready for college. Some of us, I had saved some money. John had saved some money. Now imagine going home and saying, looking to your spouse in the eyes and saying, I need you to agree, not only am I going to pledge everything we own, but the banks want to know that you're willing to sign and that you believe we're going to be successful, so you have to sign. So you have to put everything you have at risk. So we did that. The four of us did that.
As the city recovered from decades of disinvestment, these pioneers saw opportunity where others saw decay. Then, in 1990, the S&L and banking crisis evaporated capital availability for projects. Bob Kettler, who was perhaps the leading land developer in Northern Virginia in the 1980s, had to restructure his business.
Every real estate deal that was levered the way you could lever in that period had no equity left, had negative equity. And to make matters worse, and we were dealing with 14 or 15 banks at the time, and I think 14 of them were either consolidated into other banks or they failed. So whether you had a healthy project or not, when a failed bank, you don't even have a place to send the check. I mean, it would take, sometimes you would hear the next week from the FDIC or the RTC. Sometimes you wouldn't hear, we didn't hear in one case for almost a year. We had nowhere to send the money. And we couldn't draw either. So, everything just came to a screeching halt. And so, it took years to work out of some of that stuff. But yes, jumped off into the next stage. And the next stage was apartment development. And then we also re-entered the land business, and we were buying at a lower basis. So we started up again, but nowhere near the same volume we did.
As the new millennium approached, Generation X brought fresh perspectives shaped by technology and economic pragmatism.
We only want to own buildings where we can offer what we call the car experience. So it's first class interior designs, great amenities for our customers, meaning first class fitness centers, great rooftop decks, areas in the building where our customers can have impromptu meetings. We're integrating food and beverage into our public spaces. And then we've really, our team's done a great job utilizing technology to advance things like you can order, so we've built a car app. It's the Car Properties app, but you can order take-home dinners from the app that are delivered to the building for you. We've negotiated agreements with several food providers. You can order lunch that's delivered to the building, so it's very convenient for you to pick it up. You can sign up for fitness classes, personal training, yoga.
Is that in your office, or you go down to the gym in the building typically?
That's in the gym in the building. But we'll sponsor classes for the building, and then folks can sign up individually for personal training. We'll have really cool events in the building, a speaker series or a wine tasting or a beer tasting.
There's an EPD waiver. There are a lot of acronyms as part of this, but it's a way of stacking two subsidy levels to create the ability to do this kind of service-based housing, which is quite important in my mind.
Mm-hmm. So talk about the ownership structure of the deal and what the district government's involvement is in the project.
The majority of the land on the property is a 99-year ground lease. Mm-hmm. The district has both a capitalized and an annualized ground lease here. We have some fee simple because we have some townhouses and we have some condos. And so we're used to doing things on ground lease. I don't think it's that big a deal as long as it's got a long enough term on it. And it's also an opportunity zone. It's also a new market tax credit zone. It's also a qualified census tract. It's an emerging market, right? It's next to a very low income neighborhood. And so on one side, not so much low income on the other. And
so your capital stack has to be pretty impressive there.
It does. And so we have a master developer that does all of the horizontal development. And then through this entity, together with the District of Columbia, each of the 23 components, separate components, both existing rehab and new construction, are financed individually with individual market investors, et cetera. That's how it's done.
It has new markets tax credits in it. It has brownfields. It has enterprise zone and opportunity zone. In fact, it was recognized as the first deal in the United States to combine opportunity zone, capital, and new markets tax credits.
Wow.
You can imagine a legal bill for that one. It was
your documents kind of fill the corner of the
room.
room.
Yeah, all day. It was a zoo getting that done, but it was meaningful. And you go there today. I mean, that place used to catch on fire. I mean, it would catch on fire. The smoke would billow out. The president of Johns Hopkins baby would call me and say, "The building's on fire again, and I'm shutting off the HVAC. What are you guys going to do?" And it's so funny because my partner, Dave Frederick, who's retired, but who really led the initial planning here, we used to laugh all the time. He would say, "Bramble, this is the only building we've ever owned that looks the same before and after every time it burns down."
All the retail has been dying. And we're like, look, that too can happen in Wisconsin Avenue if you don't bring a robust project that's at least going to think about something more than one-dimensional. And all my final bidders were one-dimensional. They were going to build stick-built housing on top of a concrete podium. And it was a great opportunity for them to build 800 units, but nobody was doing commercial. And we said, look, this is Wisconsin Avenue. This is like the most important retail corridor there is in the entire marketplace. How could we not? If we can't figure it out here, then we can't figure it out anywhere. But for us, our approach was, it's not just about the Wegmans. It's about everything else. It's about what they could allow us to do. So now, if you look at the site, what we've done is we've lowered the elevation underneath the existing building. And so there's a 20-foot grade difference between Wisconsin Avenue and the front door.
Dig out?
We dug out. So we held up this building, changed the completely did a full structural modification to the building while we dug out 8 to 12 feet of earth underneath the building.
Was that your experience at City Market at all that made you think that way?
No.
Or what drove that decision?
Well, what drove that decision was historic preservation would not allow us to put Wegmans. We were going to originally put them in the first floor facing Wisconsin Avenue and take out the second floor slab of the building and create the height they needed, and then basically build in the back. And then you said, no, we're not going to let you do. We don't want you to do that. So then we thought, okay, well, we have a footprint to work with. Wegmans, do you need to be seen from Wisconsin? I mean, is visibility important? like, no, not really. I mean, you give me signage. That's all I care about, Richard. They don't need to see my store to know that I'm there. I said, okay. So Brian Corcoran in my office, who runs our construction group, said, you know what? It's a steel building. Richard, why don't we lower the slab? Why don't we lower the structure? So we brought in Tadrick Cohen, our structural engineer, and our architects, and we started to explore this idea. Now, remember, we bought this site for 850,000 square feet of FAR. It's approved for 1.7 million square feet of FAR. The front building wasn't historic at that time, but we designated it historic because we leaned in. So we took it through its designation. And we have this retailer that wants to be there, about 82,000 feet. And they have a clearance height they need. They need about 22 feet of height. How do we create that? So we could bring people down through. Everybody was on board because the cost of lowering the slab was the minimum compared to 300,000 feet of additional FAR. And that's really how we figured out how to lower the building.
As recovery began, a new generation entered with fundamentally different perspectives.
An apartment building previously had been used. If you were one of my residents, you would have left at 7 a.m. to go to work, and you would have come home at 6.
Right.
Thus, the building would be almost completely empty. You'd have a random nurse or a doctor or somebody that worked at night that would be there during the day. Maybe a dog walker here or there, or some sort of service people. But the building was largely vacant during the day. And now you have, I don't know the majority, but a lot of people working. I can assure you on a Monday or a Friday, and up until a year ago, probably more days than that.
Half the
Building is full, or some variant, I don't know.
You can see that with utility usage, right?
Yes. So our buildings are, my industry, not just Bozzuto, are getting hammered. My staff is getting hammered. You are now operating something that is alive 24/7.
It's like a hotel.
Totally like a hotel. What's the difference between an apartment project and a hotel? Staff count. A hotel has more staff than you could ever imagine in your life. An apartment building is run on a relatively limited staff. Even if generous, it's still not what a hotel does. So cause and effect, what have we done? Well, on new developments, you design things that are obviously more responsive to a work from home. So more amenity spaces that are used. We were walking through the Astor today, as I mentioned, and my daughter pointed out there was a sign that said study room. And she said, what's that? Could I do my work in there? I said, yeah, you could. This is right next to the University of Maryland. I said, yeah, you could do your work in there. And it was intended that way. And it had a sliding door and a phone and a TV and a printer and all the things you need. But really all it was a quiet space of your own. Now you would have thought that was your apartment unit, but if you're in your apartment every damn day, all the time, it's not social, it's not that enjoyable. So you want to come down and be, they call that alone together.
Yep.
I want to be alone, but together. I need you 2 feet away saying nothing, but I want to be near you. It's just human nature.
The other thing, design forecast we talk quite a bit about now is experience multipliers, and thinking about, it's kind of taking advantage of kind of the crisis stack and looking at experience multipliers and thinking about, how people are really, how people can interact with a place or a space. And if you do it in a way and you create these layers, there's opportunities to create a richness.
Dive into that a little deeper.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So I'll use an example that we're seeing more frequently now with some of our sports clients who recognize that actually the value isn't just about the sports team. It's actually about the experiences that can be created, in and around the venue. So how can that just not be, I should say, kind of the, venue that's used, periodically for a sports event? How can that really be, an engine for a vibrant sports and entertainment mixed use district? That's experience multipliers. So you certainly have a venue for, say, hockey or basketball, or a venue for football or soccer. But all of a sudden now you have a whole vibrant, surround that is, entertainment. Beyond that could be live music mixed in. Think of the Wharf. It could be great restaurants and different venues with office and residential mixed in. Think of the Hub on the Causeway project that we did. If you think of TD Garden, that arena was basically just the arena that had a whole slew of transit issues in and around it, and entry and exit issues. And so the Hub on Causeway was taking the land right around that, creating a new front door for that arena that linked together and solved some of the transit issues.
Interesting.
Created a vibrant, active ground plane, with different types of venues, in terms of restaurant and different types of experiential entertainment type zones, and office above, and there's residential there as well. And now it's a great scene. That's an experience multiplier.
It seems to me what you're talking about is a hospitality mindset. So in essence, you're looking at what is the customer experience? So when somebody comes to a place, what's in their mind? What do they want to experience? What would be optimal for that customer? Reverse engineering that thought process to me is what you want to accomplish in real estate.
And
in general.
And do it in a way where you're creating a little bit more of surprise and delight.
Exactly.
And when you can do that,
that's what a hotel operator wants.
Yeah. And then you think about, what does that mean for beyond a singular engagement? It's people that want to come back.
That's right.
Right? I'll give you an example, because I think you're absolutely right on hospitality. Hospitality infused into workplace, into residential. That's an experience multiplier. The Marriott headquarters, which we were designing.
Loved it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it is, plugging into an existing urban context, right? And there's a 12-story hotel that we did along, next to it is the 22-story, new Marriott building.
The durability of the cash flow, right? What is core? Durable cash flow.
Sure.
It doesn't have to be the sexiest trophy.
No.
Right? So looking at that durability and the carry costs, if it takes a little longer to lease up, being so minimal, it just had a lot of the ingredients.
Got it.
Right? To not only look at it from a cash flow perspective, but possibly from a cap rate reversion compression perspective, if it does get institutionalized and people start to understand it better. So those two things, all five of us, there's 5 partners here at Open Industrial. We thought it was the best opportunity we've seen in our short careers. We've all been in the business for almost 20 years now. So we really leaned into it together. And going back to your original question, my role here at Open Industrial is really centered around the acquisitions, the strategy of which markets we're going to be in. We are north to Boston, south to Tampa, and west in Nashville and Las Vegas right now. And I kind of run the acquisitions team, which is made up of 3 acquisitions associates that are hunting, talking to brokers. They each have a market kind of focus and lead. And, the volume is just incredible. I think we're putting out 5 or 6 LOIs every couple weeks on average.
But we were preparing to try to find a tenant to take at least half the building. So then because obviously we weren't going to do spec. And this is even before COVID. The office market was sort of heading down.
Oh, sure.
We couldn't find anything.
Sequestration was the big tipping point for Washington.
Yeah.
About 2013.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
Right. So I just think that COVID, expedited all that.
Right.
But it was already heading.
Oh, no doubt.
It was already heading in a bad place. So, my background is residential. And, me and my father and his partner thought, his partner, Steve Fisher, by the way, thought, let's pivot and let's see if this thing can be a good apartment building. Why not? So we did all the research, and it sort of checked all the boxes. 4 sides of light and air. It wasn't post-tension. The column spacing was good. The floor plates were good.
What's the floor plate on that?
It's about 23,000 square feet, 24,000 square feet.
Okay.
The window lines were good. The location is great. And even though that took convincing, people thought we were crazy because it's the Golden Triangle. No one lives in the Golden Triangle. I'm like, yeah, but guys, The West End is 3 blocks away. DuPont Circle is right here. Foggy Bottom is right here. So it took a while to convince the lenders to give us money, but obviously they came around. It took the city a while to understand it as well. But so we hired McCullough Construction as a third-party GC to do the renovation. And, it's turned out great. We're 65% leased.
That's great.
Yeah. We're getting north of $5 a foot. We secured a restaurant tenant for the retail, 8,000 square feet restaurant tenant called Moxie's. They're based out of Canada. So we're excited.
What appears as a transfer of power is actually something more profound, a continuous dialogue between experience and innovation.
We literally planned the city, and it wasn't an urban planning. It was how do you make things happen? How do you get housing to really work? How do you get retail to really work? How do you get transportation to really work? And as part of that, I undertook, PADC had a competition, and I undertook and won the competition for Market Square, and then went ahead and did Gallery Place. I knew Abe Poland as a little kid, and and he was probably one of the finest people I ever met in my life. Mm-hmm. And I said, let's work together to tie it together. And he thought I was crazy enough to work with. And we did Gallery Place. The problem with urban projects, you never know when you dig in the ground what you find between water and, turns out there's a river that goes under DC.
The Tiber River.
Tiber River. Well, when you're building, it's a pain in the ass. You've got to pump all that stuff out. And ran into part of that at Market Square. We ran into part of it at Gallery Place. But when you believe in making something work, you have to have enough vision to make it work. What really hurt us the most were interest rates becoming double digit, which was very painful.
How often do you get to come in after Federal's done such an amazing job, right, creating Bethesda Row, and have the main corner be available to develop? So we went after that, and I called Monty up and said, Monty, let's do this together. Let's joint venture this. There's going to be a condo building. There's going to be, I don't know if it's all condos or not. There's retail. We know the county. Let's do this together. And we're all in, and we're trying to come up with a different idea. And I literally go to the movies with my wife, and I stand at the intersection, and one night I come up with this crazy idea, and I call Monty the next morning. I said, Monty, come meet me at the site. He goes, what? I don't know how to do this, but I know the answer. And so we literally sit there at the corner of Bethesda and Woodmont and came up with this idea not to close Woodmont, which is what everybody wanted to do.
Right.
But right. DOT was picking the winner. It was a Department of Transportation selection. I haven't met a transportation guy who wants to close a road.
No.
And Woodmont's critical to the traffic.
Well, that's the whole purpose of Woodmont's creation in the first place.
There's a bypass.
It was a bypass to Wisconsin, right? Yeah.
So we came up with this idea not to temporarily close the road, but still build a big parking garage underneath.
Right.
And to relocate in a way that could create 2 different development buildings.
Well, you replaced, what, a 1,000-space surface parking lot or something like that?
We replaced it was 300 spaces, and we replaced it with a 1,000-space garage.
Oh, okay. Uh-huh.
But the old lot to the east of Woodmont was too small. So part of this was you had to readjust the intersection, A, to make it safer, but B, to create a second development path.
Mm-hmm.
So we did that, and we had the Darcy and the Flats. And that was the project in my mind that finished the view of who are you for us, because everybody in town, big and small and out of town, went after that project.
Should the federal government decide to vacate many of their underutilized buildings in the city? We talked a little bit about that earlier. Yeah. The new administration may impose back to work guidelines for federal employees, and several Class B buildings downtown may become more suitable. Your thoughts?
There's so many dynamics at play here. I think it's impossible to predict what the future of the office market is going to be here. We did internally a little back of the envelope analysis of what the impacts might be of job cuts. And the the Washington area has about 400,000 federal jobs. These are, non-military jobs or non-uniform military jobs. 400,000 federal jobs. This is in a market where there's 3.3 million total jobs in the area. So already sort of a relative, it's I think 12% of the workforce in the Washington area is federal. 75% of those jobs, so about 300,000 jobs, are defense, civilian defense, security, intelligence. So probably, as the signs are, that those are largely going to be untouched, those jobs. So you're talking about 100,000 jobs that are potentially at play in terms of being cut. And they can't cut all of them, right? I mean, this is people working at the Social Security Administration. They have to have some people working. Yeah. So let's just assume 20% of those jobs can be cut. You're talking 20,000, which is about 0.6% of the total employment base in the Washington area. And the job growth in this area, even in the face of declining federal employment, the federal employment has been going down over the last 10 years.
Since 2013.
Yeah. And so job growth is consistently 35, 40,000 jobs a year. For the last, pretty much on average, for the last 20 years, right, in the Washington area. So just assume it's 40,000 jobs on average. We will make up for 20,000 lost federal jobs in 6 months.
Right.
And that's it. There's only one cut, right? It's not like they're continuing to cut new jobs. Once those jobs are gone, they're gone, and we'll make up for it in 6 months, and we can move on. In terms of the back to work, I think that alone could offset some of those cuts.
Yeah.
I think my understanding was about 15,000 people whose federal jobs are based in the Washington area, but they live outside the area. They've been able to move away. So, if those folks are required to come back to the office, that also could offset any potential job cuts.
Each generation leaves its physical imprint on the city while planting seeds for what comes next. The Washington skyline stands as a physical manifestation of generational collaboration. 3 generations of visionaries, each with their own challenges and opportunities, together creating a legacy in progress.